and thank you so much for joining us. This is The Way It's Told. This is a podcast about people and their passions and the way they live that in their life. I'm Christen Gibson with the Eastern Progress, and I have Dr. Dannie Moore with me today. He is the Vice President of Strategic Initiatives and Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer. Did I get that right, Dr. Moore?
You did. And one take, too.
Awesome, right? So I so appreciate you being here today. We did an article in the Eastern Progress, a profile, and you stated that your passion in your life is to help students overcome the fact that some students, they feel like they can't accomplish a lot in their academic career. So how did you feel when you said that you had felt that way before in your life? Mm-hmm. So how did you overcome that, and what did that look like in your life?
Definitely. So I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and a lot of people aren't familiar with Milwaukee, but it's a pretty major city. But I think the big thing about Milwaukee, a lot of people don't know, it is a crime city. I mean, it is a high crime rate, very impoverished city. And so I grew up in inner city Milwaukee my whole life, and that's what I knew. That was norm, and that was my everyday. And I didn't know a lot of people that went to college. So I went through high school, and I was just kind of moving along, and I got to senior year, and it was like an epiphany. I had no idea what I was going to do next. No one in my family had tried college. So when I graduated, I did everything. I completed all my courses, and then I graduated from high school, and I couldn't get accepted to any college. I mean, I applied to city schools. I applied to schools out of state. Applied everywhere and couldn't get accepted. And I couldn't figure out. I thought I was a pretty decent student, and the thing that I didn't think about is Milwaukee Public Schools is probably one of the. At the time, it was one of those public school systems that. I mean, it was a school system that was working to get better, and so I graduated. I thought I was doing well, applied, didn't get into college, and then I actually applied to one last school. I took a semester off. I couldn't get anywhere, and I applied to University of Wisconsin Parkside, and I didn't get accepted originally, but they gave me a chance to come sit at this big table and plead my case, right? And the program was called Mars, and I was a 18-year-old kid from the inner city of Milwaukee, and I went in there and basically had to have a conversation of why I thought I would be successful in college. And at that point, I didn't know. I mean, I didn't have a lot of answers, and I think that at that moment, it took someone in that room to really believe in me. And at that point, I didn't believe in myself. I had heard so many times that people that come from where I come from, they don't make it. College isn't for everyone. Go work in the factory, go do all these other things. And I'll never forget, her name was Bridget, and she worked in multicultural affairs at University of Wisconsin Parkside. And at that point, I feel like she believed in me, and they accepted me, and I provided some wraparound support and all those things. But before that, I'd heard so many times that college wasn't for everybody, it wasn't for me, and then I got to college and still struggled. So it was roadblock after roadblock after roadblock.
And so you said Bridget really felt like she believed in you. What's some of the things that she told you that really kept you going, even though you had been denied college after college?
Well, I think she was the first. I think there were so many people at each institution, at each part of my journey. So many people, let me know that I was where I was supposed to be. Right? Like I think in research terms, they say like imposter syndrome. Like you feel like you aren't supposed to be there, and she. I think it wasn't as much as what she said, it's kind of how she carried herself, right? Like I would, I walked around campus in sweatpants and do-rags, right? Like every day. And she would tell me, take that off. Like, you have to look the part. You have to, she helped me figure out how to study. At the point, I didn't know anything about getting books or financial aid or, I like to joke and say when I went to college, I had everything I owned in 2 black trash bags, and I showed up and I unlocked the door and went in the room. And so she taught me a lot of those things that I needed to know to be able to kind of navigate it. And then the other piece I think that was really the life-changing point is she helped me get involved. So I went from this kid that was DJing parties, having a good time, struggling in class to getting involved, getting engaged, and then it kind of went from there.
Now, for students at Eastern Kentucky University that may find themselves in your shoes where you just didn't know where to go, where to start, what kind of things can they do and access here on campus to maybe feel like you did, or someone that to believe in them? Is there anything in place for that?
Definitely. I mean, I think there's a lot of people on campus, a lot of places on campus. I think the part that I like to say is we got to kind of get our cool caps off, right? Like, we are too cool for everything when we're 18 to 21 or we're a college student. I think for me, I had to take that off, right? Like, I had to be able to go ask questions like, I have to fill out the FAFSA, or I have to, find my parents' W-2s. Because when you're a first-generation college student and you walk home and say, Mom, we need to fill out the FAFSA, she may not know what you're talking about. So I think the first thing I would say is take the cool cap off, feel comfortable asking questions. And then, there's so many resources on campus, whether it's the Center for Inclusive Excellence, whether it's Student Success. I mean, these people truly care. But I think for students like me, it's just this distrust, right? Like, we don't have a relationship. I don't know you. We're not from the same place. So it's not as easy to kind of walk in and ask for help. So I would say kind of take the cool cap off, feel comfortable asking the first question, and try to develop relationships with people that work in college. I mean, for many of us, we do this because we really want to help people. I feel like I work at an institution because I pay it forward. Like, I felt like, whether it was Bridget, whether it was DJ, whether it was Faye, I mean, there's so many people throughout my college journey that were there that, when I was struggling in a class, that said, hey, go study. Or, if I was playing video games, they say, hey, stop playing video games. I mean, there's all these things that, you don't think about it in a moment, but people really have an impact.
You said multiple people inspired you to keep going, but you not only just kept going and got your minimal in your education, you've gotten your doctorate degree. Can you tell people a little bit how you got involved in your education and where it's kind of led you now?
Definitely. So when I was going through college, and I think we were joking earlier, I really wanted to be a radio personality. So I was in college, and I was majoring in communications, and I really wanted to be on the radio. But I talked about Bridget having me get involved. So one thing I got involved in, I was an RA on campus. So I was a resident assistant, and when I was starting to do this, it was a joke between me and my roommates. But I became a resident assistant, and I got to feel like I was helping people learn how to navigate campus. And then when I got ready to graduate, I was offered a graduate assistantship. And at that point, it was a chance to go to graduate school for free. So get my master's for free while working at an institution. But that meant I had to kind of put radio on the back burner. And, being the first person to kind of go through college, when I told my parents, they're going to give me a free degree, they said, you're going to graduate school. Like they felt like that was the next step. When I got there, and it was the same thing. There were so many kids that were just like me, right? That I went to graduate school at Eastern Illinois University. There were so many kids that came from East St. Louis, Chicago, that were just like me, that were in college. They were there. They wanted to do better. They just didn't know where to start. And so I felt like I was able to help them become comfortable with college, help them think about things that they could do different. And at that point, I had already graduated. So people saw me as, oh, if he can do it, I can do it, right? And so that was, I got a chance to do that, and I enjoyed doing that. And then after in between my 2 years, I wanted to go back to Milwaukee, where I was from. So I worked at Marquette. And then, there's Mary Jans, who I still talk to today, and she gave me an opportunity to help more students there in the summer, in between my years of graduate school. And, and when I graduated, Mary and I stayed in contact, and she was like, Dan, you should come back. Right, and I went back to Milwaukee because I wanted to continue to do what I was doing, and I think it's just the journey's just continued, right? Like I think, after I got my master's degree, I started to feel like, okay, I'm where I'm supposed to be, and then I continued to kind of work at different institutions, and then a few years ago, it's like I want to keep going. I felt like if I wanted to continue to help people, I could have more influence as I continue to move up. So I thought about, a doctorate, and, for a lot of people, they say, if you get a doctorate, it's about you, right? Like it's a whole different journey. And at that point, I was married with children. And so not only were students looking up to me, I had children, that were looking up to me, and they wanted, I wanted them to be able to see that if you start something, you can finish it. So it's been a series of people that I think have come into my life and really just helped me, even as an adult, as a doctoral student. Brandolyn was there with me when I was doing research and working on my dissertation and, having challenges trying to edit it and saying, Danny, you got this, right? Like, you're supposed to be here. And I think that reinforcement is a lot of times what students need. And I think, I think more people want to do that and are willing to do that. But I think for students, it's about feeling comfortable. So I like to say, my approach is let's develop relationships, let's talk, let's engage. So when I say, hey, you should think about this, or you should, you need to stop playing video games, or, when I was in college, it was stop being in intramurals more than you're in class. And think about those things that you need to do to be successful.
Now, you said you went into your education thinking that you wanted to do radio.
Mm-hmm.
This podcast is about people and their passions. What would you tell students that go into college just because they know that's where they're supposed to be, but don't necessarily have a direction or a declared major that they feel like they're passionate about? How do students find that?
I think you follow what you enjoy. Like I talked about being involved. I was in so many organizations, but one thing that I did in college is I had a radio show. Me and my roommates, something we wanted to do. We were on WIPZ, and we were like, we're gonna do this show. We're gonna have fun. We're gonna crack jokes. We're gonna DJ, and we did that, and we enjoyed it. And then when I graduated, I said I had to make that choice. When I was in graduate school, I took my turntables with me, and for fun, I would go in the quad and DJ. So you still have to find ways to kind of find that balance. But I think it's important to try things out. Right, like I always tell students when you think about what to get involved in as a start, get involved in something that ties to the major that you think you want to be a part of, and then get involved in something that's social. For me, I was involved in a fraternity. It means a lot to me, right? Like that fraternity experience was transformational for me. So people know that I talk about Greek life and what that can do. So I think you find ways, and throughout these different experiences, you start to learn, right? Like I started to feel like, maybe I'm really good at helping students figure it out, like helping them kind of navigate, right? Like and not, I think sometimes students feel like as you move up the work ladder, you're unapproachable, or, I think for me as a vice president, I can still sit down with a student and talk to them about, navigating college, about getting involved. And so for me, I felt like the calling came to me through being involved.
And so for someone that has tried to get involved and maybe the first try just wasn't their thing, what would you say to them?
Keep trying. I mean, the first probably 10 tries won't be your thing. It's about the experience that really works for you. And you won't know that until you get involved in a few things. And I like to say to students to think about doing things that you do alone. Like, a lot of students do things because their friends do it. And for me, I got involved in student government, and none of my friends wanted to do that. Like, that was not their thing. They didn't care anything about student government. But student government, I was in Wisconsin. It was called SUFAC. It was a Segregated University Fee Allocation Committee, and in that, I got to serve as the student representative that basically distributed the university funding. So I got to work with the president. So and this is a kid from Milwaukee. I didn't even own a suit, couldn't tie a tie, and I'm meeting with the university president. So to think about the learning experiences that you have by just kind of stepping out of that space of kind of comfort and really finding your fit. And so for me, it was stepping out, doing things. It didn't work, do something else. And I would also say, I did things like I gave tours on campus because I wanted to make a little extra money. But that gave me a chance to connect with more students. So it's just finding ways to kind of plug in while you're here.
Definitely. So you stated in the article that the Eastern Progress wrote, you said that this is your dream job, where you're at right now. What would you say to people that may be graduating and looking for that dream job and just inspired to do what they love? What would you tell them?
I think there's a lot of things I would probably say. I think the first one is understand that the dream job may not come tomorrow when you graduate. And I think for, and I'm probably a younger professional in many senses. And so for a lot of us, is we think about like, I went to college all this time, I want to get out, I want this dream job, I want to make all this money, and that may not happen tomorrow. But keep pushing, right? Like keep going after what you love and follow your passion. So, and it might be a journey. I've worked at different institutions, I've learned, I've grown, I gained experiences, and I took advantage of all those experiences. So whether it was Eastern Illinois, whether it was Marquette University, whether it was the University of Texas at Arlington, Northern Kentucky University, each of those stops, I learned something, I grew from it, and I gained experience that I put into my toolkit that prepared me for this job. So understand that your dream job may take a little bit, and that's okay, right? I think just keep going after it, like keep going in the direction of what you love. And you know, I like to say, a mentor of mine said years ago, do what you love and money will come, right? Like, so I continue to do what I love, and, you know, I felt like it was worth it. Like, I continued to throw everything I had into working with students, into connecting with students, and again, taking advantage of the opportunities.
Awesome. And so here at Eastern Kentucky University, if someone's listening to this and they say, wow, I'm really inspired by your story, can they contact you? Can they talk to you?
Definitely. I mean, there's multiple ways. So like I said, I'm a little bit younger, so I'm still in this kind of social media world. Twitter's probably my platform of choice, but whether it's social media, my office is actually in Powell Student Center. So I'm not far, so I'm right kind of in the hub in Powell 100. My door is always open, you know, email. But I feel like if you just want to connect, I think that's part of, like I said, part of my journey has been connecting with people. And I think, you know, again, everybody's story, everybody's journey is going to be different. But every time I talk to someone, I try to engage with them and learn and listen. And so, yeah, my door is always open. I am, like I said, I'm avidly on Twitter. So if you want to tweet, I will. You know, we can connect in that space. But I think it's important to just connect. You know, if anybody wants to have coffee, we can grab some Starbucks and talk. But I think it's important to talk to people that have been on different journeys, right? Like, you may not find someone that's exact. Like, I've not met a lot of people that have the exact job that I have right now, but I've met so many people that worked in education that's given me just nuggets that, you know, I take with me as I go by and do my work every day.
Awesome. And so in your role, you were hired at Eastern Kentucky University and started in July of 2020. In the middle of a pandemic.
Yep.
And you're saying it's so important to connect with students. How do students overcome the whole social distancing, the whole thing that the pandemic has brought upon us? What are some ways that they can still connect and feel like they're involved?
I think what one thing the pandemic did well was showed us that technology can work. Or like, I think, you know, though I'm zoomed out a lot of the time, but it showed us that you can have meaningful relationships via Zoom. You know, like earlier this week, my wife and I had lunch via Zoom because she works at a nursing home. She couldn't get out as much. So we said, we're going to have a lunch meeting over Zoom. I mean, you can do things that you wouldn't think about. You know, we've had, you know, the big thing in the music world is versus battles, right? Where you have two artists that get on social media and battle, or, you know, there's been meaningful conversations, right? Like when things that are going on in the world and you want to talk about it. We've been doing some of that via Zoom or in a social space. So I think taking advantage of that, I think social media makes it easier to connect. I think it's just the things you have to be intentional now. I think, you know, when we weren't in COVID, we could just walk around and, oh, there's Danny, let's talk. I forgot to call him, so I'm going to talk about this. I think now in COVID, you just have to be intentional. Like, I have to, you know, periodically have to go through my phone and say, hey, have I checked on X, Y? Like, I have to kind of scroll through because it doesn't happen as easily as it used to. And I think it's been intentional, but we've learned that we can be there and be engaged just in a social way. And I think if I could say one other thing, I think also thinking about post-COVID, right? Like when we come back, how do you want to be present? How do you want to be engaged? How do you want to be involved? So starting to think about that as well.
Awesome. I think that's great advice, and I appreciate it so much for you coming on the show, talking a little bit about your journey. Now, I have to ask one question. You're passionate about helping students, but you're also passionate about music. You said you DJ'd. What's some of your favorite music?
Oh. I'm going to probably age myself. So I'm going to say I'm probably like the Jay-Z Nas era, but I have an 18-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old daughter, and they're in the TikTok world. So I hear a lot of songs that I have to like get ready to kind of TikTok with them, but I'm probably into that kind of older hip hop. But I listen to a little bit of everything. I mean, you know, our house is, if you walk in our house at any point, there's going to be music playing somewhere. And so my oldest daughter, who's a senior in high school, she is her love for music is probably just as much as mine. So she is keeping me abreast to what's going on, or what artist is doing what, and we kind of talk about it. So I love music.
And that's just a perfect example of how your passions, you can have more than one passion, and they can follow you throughout your entire life.
Definitely.
And I think that's very inspiring.
Definitely. And the days of a radio show aren't over. I'm going to do it at some point in my career. I'm going to get a radio show again.
Hey, we'll be there to listen to it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Moore, for joining us. And thank you guys for listening to The Way It's Told. Follow and like us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And check out this episode. Thank you.
Thank you.